For as long as humans have been on Earth, we've been looking up at Mars in the night sky. Since then, we've studied the red planet with telescopes and satellites. We've driven vehicles on its surface. We've even detected possible signs of ancient life on the planet. And now, some scientists say we'll eventually live on Mars. But what would a day on the red planet look like? Hey everyone, Jacqueline Howard here. If we took a trip to Mars, what would it be like once we land and settle there? That's not a far-fetched thought. The Planetary Society, a nonprofit organization here in the US, claims that it'll be pretty easy for NASA to send astronauts to Mars by 2039. The European Space Agency and Russia have been mulling over plans for a manned mission to Mars. And there's even a private effort called Mars One to set up a human colony on the red planet by 2027. But what would it really be like to live on Mars? Wilder than you might imagine. Here are 5 freaky facts about living a Martian life that will leave you at a loss for words. You could jump as high as a kangaroo and lift heavy things you'd never have a chance of picking up on Earth. And that's because there's not as much gravity weighing you down on Mars as there is on Earth. The gravity on Mars is only about 38% of that on Earth. So that means that you and everything else around you would weigh about 1/3 of your Earth weight. So if you weighed 100 pounds on Earth, you'd probably weigh around 38 pounds on Mars. And if you could jump 3.3 feet high on Earth, you could jump 9 feet on Mars. Yikes, things were starting to seem too good to be true. NASA scientists just recently discovered that space flights lasting longer than 6 months can cause eye problems in astronauts, like blurry vision. And a trip to Mars would take about 5 to 10 months, depending on the speed of your launch and the alignment of Earth and Mars, of course. So some doctors worry that a trip to the red planet could have negative effects on your vision. Researchers still aren't quite sure what causes these vision problems, but some scientists pose that reduced gravity during spaceflight can cause fluids in your upper body to move across cell membranes and blood vessels differently than they would on Earth. And that's what could impact your eye structure and weaken your vision. Because living on the surface would be treacherous. Mars barely has an atmosphere, which leaves us vulnerable to the sun's ultraviolet radiation beaming down on the planet. Whereas on Earth, we have an ozone layer that acts as a natural SPF to protect us from the sun's radiation and space radiation. Whereas Mars doesn't seem to have a magnetic field. In fact, some scientists say that the planet ceased to create a magnetic field around 4 billion years ago. And that's not all. The little atmosphere on Mars, which is 95% carbon dioxide, allows for winds to whip up powerful dust storms. And the planet experiences conditions that are inhospitable and super chilly temperatures. Sure, Mars tilts on its axis much like Earth, so it has seasons like we do. But the global average on Mars is -80 degrees Fahrenheit. Brrr. Feel like calling mom to tell her about your day on Mars? Forget about it. The radio communications would experience a 4 to 20 minute delay, which depends on the distance Mars is from Earth as the planets orbit the sun. Mars and Earth orbit the sun at different speeds, which is why a year on Earth is 365 days, but a year on Mars is 687 days. So the closest possible distance between Earth and Mars along their orbits would be 34 million miles, but the farthest apart they could get would be 250 million miles. Meet Phobos and Deimos. They are 2 small moons that orbit Mars. But as you look up at night, they'd appear very different in the sky than our moon. In fact, they would sort of dance in the sky as Phobos orbits Mars 3 times a day, whereas Deimos takes 30 hours to complete 1 orbit. That means living on the red planet would be beautiful, but still bizarre. Is there anything else about visiting Mars that has you scratching your head? Let me know your thoughts.
3, 2, 1. Main engine start, ignition, and liftoff of the Atlas V with MAVEN, looking for clues about the evolution of Mars through its atmosphere.
The MAVEN mission is just one of those unbelievably exciting missions. We are doing something no one has ever done before. We're going to be able to learn the history of a planet by going into its atmosphere. The MAVEN mission is all about the evolution of the Martian atmosphere. It used to be rather dense, like the Earth's atmosphere. It's now very, very thin and not breathable. You couldn't go to Mars and breathe normally. It doesn't have that kind of atmosphere any longer. So we wonder why Mars lost that atmosphere. This is a tough mission to look backwards maybe 1 million years in Martian history. But it would be great to know if there was an event that caused it or chemistry that caused it that we could apply to Earth.
Everything looking good?
Space Sciences Lab has gotten very good at building space instruments. We have scientists and engineers work together to design specific instruments for specific missions. We have instruments made by the University of California in concert with instruments made by Goddard Space Flight Center and the University of Colorado. And these instruments as a whole will determine what kind of chemistry is in the upper atmosphere of Mars. It's conceivable that the science will show that there was a global warming event on Mars, and we could learn from that. So we never know. This is the business of science. You have to go out there and see what you can, measure what you can, and interpret it as best you can.
We have stage separation.
How exciting would it be to be part of a group of students who actually use a spacecraft to conduct their own science investigation at Mars? It sounds like science fiction, but it's science fact. It's called the Mars Student Imaging Project, and it's open to student classrooms grades 5 through college. One group of middle school students even discovered a cave on Mars. Dream of exploring Mars one day? Students can use their imagination to design their own community on Mars in the Imagine Mars project. Got a question about Mars, maybe a homework assignment, and you need a little help? Try asking Dr. C. For instance, you can ask him how big Mars is, and he'll give you the answer. Mars is only half the size of Earth. If you're a teacher and looking for lesson plans and activities to assist you in the classroom, check out the downloadable Mars Activities. It's where you'll find a wealth of ideas about how to engage your students. If you want to explore Mars on your own, you can be a Martian. At this internet site, you can explore many aspects of Mars, or you can contribute to a better understanding of the Red Planet by participating in what's called citizen science, by helping to create a Mars map, count craters, tag rover images, and more. If you just want some electronic playtime, there's Mars 3D, actual images of Mars taken by NASA spacecraft in 3 dimensions. Speaking of 3D, check out the brand new Explore Mars website where you can roam around in 3D. If you have an Xbox, you can try your own skill at landing on Mars. As a free download, students can also learn to be a rover driver and make their own discoveries in a new NASA Mars experience with Kodoo, a new visual programming language accessible for children and made specifically for creating games. Want to fly to Mars aboard Curiosity? Try out Eyes on the Solar System. And don't forget, you can get the latest on Martian discoveries anytime, anywhere, on Be a Martian mobile apps on all devices, Android, iPhone, and Windows Phone. Plus, look for Mars information on your favorite social media sites, Twitter, Facebook, and Google+. There are many ways you can learn about the Red Planet and all about the NASA missions there. Mars, it's all about learning.
This is a story about a dream. It has been my dream for 15 years to create a human mission to Mars. But I could never figure out how to finance such a mission until 1.5 years ago someone gave me the idea. You can fund this mission by creating the biggest media event ever around it. So, for me this was the last piece of the puzzle, and I took the plunge. I sold some of the shares in my previous company, and I founded Mars One, a commercial company that will put humans on the planet Mars. When our astronauts land in 2023, a habitable outpost will be waiting for them. This settlement will support them for the rest of their lives because they are going to spend the rest of their lives on Mars. They will not be alone. Every 2 years we will send an additional crew to Mars to join them. On Mars, the first crew especially will build. They will find a settlement and they will have to upgrade it to become their new home. We will send them supplies with which they can create additional living space, and they will prepare the settlement for arrival of new astronauts. Our plan is really possible. We've done a technical feasibility study, and we've split our plan up into several major components, like the rocket and the living unit. For each of these components, we have found suppliers, major aerospace companies from around the world. We've received letters of interest from these companies in which they confirm that they can produce the equipment that we need. This is really possible. So Mars One is a commercial company, and our business case is to create a huge media spectacle around the human mission to Mars. It will start with astronaut selection. It will peak when the humans land on Mars, but it will never end. It will be as big as the Olympics, but it will run for 50 years or more. So let me make one thing clear. It is not my goal to create a media spectacle. It is my dream and my goal to put humans on Mars. But I think that you can only do this if you have a profitable business case. And the media spectacle is the only profitable business case that I can think of that will make this possible. If you are sending humans to Mars, you cannot depend on government funding or on donations from a rich individual. They have to be self-sufficient, and they can do this if they have a profitable business case. So, 3 weeks ago, my company Mars One has announced this plan. We have a website. We've had over 1 million unique visitors to the website. So my dream is really starting to take place. So far, I have invested in this plan financially, and the whole team of Mars One has invested their time. But now, with the attention that we're getting through the media, we're trying to find investors and sponsors. And with the money that we get from sponsors and investors, we want to fund conceptual design studies by our suppliers. And the conceptual design studies will show in more detail that this is really possible. And with the attention and the additional credibility that this gives us, we will start the astronaut selection. Everybody in the world who is healthy, smart, and mentally stable will be able to apply to become one of the first humans on Mars. So, going to Mars is literally the next giant leap for mankind. And I feel that this is really something we should do. In these times of economic crisis and war, this can be something positive, something adventurous, and something inspiring that the whole world can support together. This is really possible. Let's go to Mars. Thank you. Mars One Foundation starts the search for Mars inhabitants.